Hello and welcome, I'm Pherian. In my previous two videos I talked about the origins of the tarot and the role of the Fool. In this video I shall recount the Fool's journey and explain the esoteric meaning of the minor arcana, and you'd better watch out, cause the devil's in the details. The three sets of major arcana are cards 1 to 7, 8 to 14, and 15 to 21. The first trump, the magician, represents the Hindu god Indra, the first creator of illusion. Indra is the protagonist of the Veda hymns and is still worshipped by Kalish people of northern Pakistan, who are strongly related with the Romani people living in Europe today. Indra's iconography shows him wielding a vajra or magic wand in his right hand. The second trump is the papess or priestess. She represents Sarasvati, the Hindu goddess of knowledge, music, and art. The papess embodies our mysterious unconscious and unrealized potential. She is often associated with the three concepts of manasa, vacha, and karmana, namely mind, speech, and action, which are embodied by the Empress, Emperor, and Hierophant respectively. The vow to strive and achieve unity of mind, speech, and action is undertaken between a bodhisattva and their teacher during empowerment. The collocation of the papess ahead of the other three rulers is a clear hint of the Cathar's belief that women could have a leading role in spiritual organizations, in total disagreement with the Christian Church. The Hierophant, or Pope, was the Cathar's sworn enemy. That's why he's placed last, despite his being actually the most powerful figure in medieval Europe. After meeting the four rulers, the Fool must determine his own values and question received opinion. He is given a choice between the love of a woman wearing flowers in her hair, who embodies sensuality and attachment, and a woman donning a crown, who embodies wisdom and abnegation. He picks the latter. The seventh trump is the Chariot, which signifies the Fool's mastery over himself and his ability to move on along the path of life all the way to enlightenment. In ancient Vedic mythology, the sun's chariot was pulled by 7 horses. Having bid his wife and child a silent farewell, Siddhartha Gautama called his faithful charioteer Channa to bring forth Kantaka, his horse, and left his kingdom to become an ascetic in search of the solutions to life's many questions. The chariot is also reminiscent of the horse-drawn wagons used by Romani people traveling from Asia to Europe in the Middle Ages. The second set of major arcana starts with the 8th trump, that is, Justice. Blue Tara, also known as Ekajati, is the most powerful and fierce goddess of Tibetan mythology. She represents discipline and integrity, as well as secret knowledge. She holds a sword in her right hand and a skull cup in her left. She corresponds to Lady Justice in Western culture. Number 8 is the infinity symbol, and it implies restored health, a second chance, a new beginning. A Japanese proverb about perseverance, Nana Korobi Yaoki, translates to fall down 7 times, get up 8. The 8th trump hints at a higher octave, that is, a higher level of awareness. The Chinese term Bafang means expansion in the 8 directions, and is often equated with Fazan, which translates to growth and development. The octoad played an important part in Gnostic cosmology, dividing the solar system into 8 main components, namely 1 star, 6 principal planets, and an outer region stretching from Uranus to what we now call the Oort cloud. In Buddhism, the Eightfold Path from the obscured mind of ignorance to the luminous mind of wisdom grants liberation from samsara. The octagon, called Bakwa by Taoists, is regarded as a symbol of protection, a reflection of the human soul, and an interface between the macrocosm and the microcosm. It is associated with the eightfold cycle of elements, in which water feeds wood, wood contains metal, metal absorbs fire, fire vaporizes water, water quenches fire, fire melts metal, metal chops wood, and wood drains water. The 9th trump is the hermit, who is traditionally depicted as carrying a staff in one hand and a lit lantern in the other. The lamp symbolizes truth and wisdom. The Buddha told his disciple Ananda to dwell as a lamp unto himself. The records of the transmission of the lamp is a compilation of 1,700 Buddhist biographies from antiquity up to the early 11th century. The most legendary of these lamp bearers was the Indian hermit Bodhidharma, who arrived at the Shaolin Temple and laid the foundations of modern Chinese martial arts. The legendary Hermit's Cave in Jiangxi Province, China, is the location of the oldest pottery relics in the world, dating back about 20,000 years. Many of the shards had scorch marks, suggesting those ancient clay bowls were used for cooking. Before the ceremony of initiation, the candidate to a Masonic lodge is placed for a time in the Chamber of Reflection, a somber meditation room marked with the acronym Vitriol, which stands for Visit the Interior of the Earth, Purify Yourself, and Find the Occult Stone. The glyph of number 9 was originally a spiral, related to the Ouroboros, a symbol of introspection and renewal. The ancients believed that snakes were immortal because they could infinitely shed their skin and appear forever youthful. In addition, certain rat snakes and salamanders are known to live in deep burrows and caves. 9 is regarded as an eternal number because when multiplied by any number, the answer invariably adds to 9. For example, 9 times 8 makes 54, and 5 plus 4 equals 9. If all the numbers up to and including 9 are added, the total is 45, which again adds to 9. After much soul-searching, the fool begins to understand the inner workings of the universe. The 10th trump is the wheel. In Chinese, number 10 is called shi, which is nearly homophonous with shi, short for shishi, which means fact, actuality. The Chinese ideograph for 10 is a cross, derived from the symbol of the sun chariot, which consisted of a cross inside a circle. The Bhava Chakra, or Wheel of Life, is painted on the outside walls of many a Himalayan temple. A golden wheel, flanked by 2 deer, is found above the main entrance of Jokan Temple, the most sacred in Lhasa, Tibet. An expanded version of the Bhava Chakra is called Kala Chakra, or Wheel of Time, which includes a monstrous figure transcending space and time. It is an allegory for the spiritual drama of human life linked to the concept of samsara, the cycle of death and rebirth. A spoked wheel is present in the modern flag of India and in that of the Romani people. In ancient European mythology, the Wheel of Fortune belonged to the goddess Tyche, who would spin it at random, bestowing great suffering on some people and bliss on others. The 11th trump is Strength, represented by a woman and a lion, which draw on the character of the woman riding a beast mentioned in the Book of Revelation. She is described as Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. The legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon and the Tower of Babel were both associated with Babylon the Great as symbols of luxurious and arrogant power. The Strength card depicts the battle between courage and cowardice, humility and pride, diligence and sloth, chastity and lust. Narasimha is a fierce avatar of the Hindu god Vishnu, who incarnated in the form of part lion and part man to destroy evil and calamity on earth. The 12th trump is the Hanged Man. This symbol of patience, forbearance, and self-reflection was introduced by Kabbalists. In the Middle Ages, when Jews were sentenced to death, they were usually hanged by their feet between two rabid dogs. 12 is approximately the number of full lunations in a year and the number of years for the orbital period of Jupiter, the largest planet in the solar system. Therefore, 12 is synonymous with all-round knowledge and the ability to see the world from every angle. The 13th trump is Death, and it refers to ego death, a fundamental phase of transition. Buddhists call ego death the great death, in contrast to the physical small death. In most ancient cultures, rites of passage involved a simulation of death conducive to a spiritual rebirth. In Judaism, 13 signifies the age at which a boy matures and becomes a full member of the community. 1 plus 3 equals 4. In Chinese, number 4 is called Si, which is virtually homophonous with Si, short for Siwang, which means death and doom. It is also a near homophone of Si, short for Sixin, which means ego and selfishness. The 14th trump is Temperance, which is depicted as a woman holding two vessels, transferring water from one to the other. She stands with one foot in the water and one foot on land, reminiscent of the Taiji, the Taoist symbol of balance in which the opposite forces of yin and yang may actually be complementary and interdependent. Taiji, which is pronounced Taeguk in Korean and Taikyoku in Japanese, is featured in several East Asian flags and emblems. Temperance was one of the cardinal virtues in Greek philosophy and the essential characteristic of the Buddha's middle way between the extremes of sensual indulgence and self-mortification that leads to non-duality, equanimity, and bliss. The third set of major arcana starts with the devil and leads to the consummation of the fool's journey. Gnostic religions postulated that the material world is inherently evil. The first and foremost noble truth taught by the Buddha is that suffering is an innate characteristic of existence in the realm of samsara. In Asian mythologies, the equivalent of Satan is Mahakala in Sanskrit, Nakpochempo in Tibetan, and Dahaitian in Chinese. He is the great dark teacher who embodies life's hardships. We should never stop learning because life never stops teaching. Anything that is troubling or irritating us, that is our teacher. The 16th trump is the Tower, which provides a false sense of security. It represents the fortresses in which the Cathars sought refuge prior to their official downfall on March 16, 1244. Those who managed to escape persecution and avoid death took with them a few Gnostic texts and illuminated manuscripts, which contributed some allegorical imagery to the tarot. The lightning bolt suggests a divine intervention which subverts the status quo and liberates the spirit and the wisdom it carries. Luke the evangelist wrote, "I watched Satan fall from heaven like a flash of lightning." The 17th trump is the star, representing the goddess Ishtar or Tara, whom the tarot itself is named after. The Sanskrit term Tara means star. The Fool has finally found his bearings. Star charts have been used for human navigation since time immemorial. Stargazing provides a method for finding direction at night, and the Pleiades are one of the most prominent sights in the winter night sky. After the star, the Fool encounters the moon and the sun, two celestial bodies of increasing light, and the archetypal pair ruling over time. The moon frowns upon a wolf, a dog, and a crayfish, which symbolize delusion, greed, and aversion. They are sometimes replaced by a pig, a rooster, and a snake, and associated with the three primary feelings that keep humans trapped in samsara. In the 19th trump, which is the sun, an infant rides a white horse under the sun disk. The child holds a red flag, indicating the attainment of rubedo, that is, success at the end of the great work of alchemy. The Philosopher's Stone, associated with the sun's radiance, symbolizes perfection at its finest. Known as Chintamani or Sparshamani in Sanskrit, the Philosopher's Stone is pictured as guarded by a bodhisattva or carried by a horse on Tibetan prayer flags. Since the moon merely reflects light, while the sun generates light of its own, traveling from the moon to the sun allegorically symbolizes finding one's inner light, that is, one's true self. Chinese alchemists and bodhisattvas were said to use their psychic power to create an ectoplasmic infant called Sentai. They would then transfer their consciousness from their physical body to the divine embryo they had created, which could retain memory and wisdom for their next incarnation as spiritual teachers. The 20th trump is Judgment. The traditional scene is modeled after Christian imagery of the resurrection and last judgment. An angel is depicted blowing a great trumpet, similar to a Tibetan gyaling or sorna, while the sleeping dead are emerging from graves or crypts, as they do in the Rosary of Philosophers, a 16th century alchemical treatise containing 20 illustrations describing the attainment of spiritual perfection. The angel is Lucifer, the light bringer, or its Buddhist counterpart Yamantaka, meaning the destroyer of death, or his Hindu equivalent Shukra, that is, the carrier of enlightenment. The concept of full awakening in this card can be equated with that of the Sama Sambodhi, the perfect enlightenment that the 35-year-old Siddhartha Gautama reached under the sacred fig tree. 45 years later, aged 80, the Buddha entered his final meditation and died, reaching what is known as paranirvana, the definitive end of suffering and release from transmigration. This state of consciousness is represented by the so-called world card, that is, the 21st and last trump. In it, the personification of divine wisdom, known as the goddess Sophia, is wearing a long scarf and is surrounded by various creatures. In Asian mythologies, there are at least two deities associated with wisdom and self-liberation, which inspire the imagery in this trump. Prajna Paramita is usually depicted as a beautiful woman wearing a scarf around her body, surrounded by allegorical beings. Palden Lamo, the tutelary deity of Tibet, is said to dwell around Lake Lamo, the most sacred in the eastern Himalayas. She rides a mule followed by goblins and trolls. The minor arcana consists of 56 cards divided into 4 suits of 14 cards each. That is to say, 10 pip cards numbering from 1 to 10 and 4 face cards, namely King, Queen, Knight, and Page. So numbers 10 and 4 rule over the minor arcana. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the basis of the numerical pattern which underlies the physical universe. The tetractys, an equilateral triangle figure consisting of 10 points, is a simple demonstration that 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10, which represents the metaphysical universe. In other words, 4 symbolizes the microcosm and 10 the macrocosm. According to Kabbalah, the 10 Sephirot are the 10 attributes or emanations through which the infinite monad reveals itself. String theory 2 says the universe should have a total of 10 dimensions. In the Dasha Bhumika Sutra, the Buddha describes 10 stages of development that a bodhisattva must progress through in order to accomplish full enlightenment. The Kabbalistic tree of life extends over 4 planes of existence, which are summarized by the Tetragrammaton, that is, the 4 Hebrew letters for the name Yahweh, the biblical God of Israel. The swords, wands, cups, and pentacles are connected with the 4 states of matter, namely solid, liquid, gas, and plasma, as well as the 4 stages of the great work, namely nigredo, albedo, citrinitas, and rubedo. 4 pillars are needed to construct a cube or an ordinary building. The axes of a 2-dimensional Cartesian system divide the plane into 4 regions. That's why the Chinese character for tilled land is a square divided into 4 quadrants. Most societies throughout history have consisted of 4 main social classes, usually clergy, nobility, merchants, and farmers. Ancient Hindus also regarded human life as having 4 purposes: Dharma, or righteousness, Artha, or prosperity, Kama, or pleasure, and Moksha, or renunciation. The 4 pips can be compared to the 4 points of a compass rose, while the 4 face cards draw on the 4 temperaments of the humoral theory, although the 2 systems are somehow related. Swords represent observation and logic, the air element, and the easterly direction. Wands represent initiative and creativity, the fire element, and the southerly direction. Cups represent intuition and sensuality, the water element, and the westerly direction. Pentacles represent economy and security, the earth element, and the northerly direction. The king embodies development and realization and is linked to the sword symbol. The knight embodies practicality and consistency and is linked to the wand symbol. The queen embodies influence and persuasion and is linked to the cup symbol. The page embodies hope and opportunity and is linked to the pentacle symbol. Just like the fool, we have come full circle. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time.